Welcome to VLearn, Virtual Learning Network. This is session number 20 of the subject India Earliest Times to the 8th Century AD, and the chapter is Administrative Organization and Relationship with Other Powers. Topics to be covered are Introduction, Background, Central Administration 1 and 2nd, Regional and Local Units of Administration, Relations with Other Powers. Introduction. By the 3rd century BC, the Mauryan state with its center in Magad was firmly established. It had a vast territory to control and had an administrative apparatus for doing it. So by the 3rd century BC, the Mauryan state had expanded and they had their center in Magad that was firmly established, and they had a vast territory to control and the administrative tools also for doing it. This apparatus covered within its range various levels of administration of the core region of the empire, regional centers, peripheral areas, cities, villages, and so on. Besides sustaining the king's authority and order, the administration took into its fold a wide range of activities concerning justice, army, espionage, revenue collections, handicrafts, etc. So besides sustaining the king's authority, besides giving him respect about his authority and order, the administration also took it into its fold wide range of other activities also, like political justice, maintaining army, espionage, spy contacts, revenue collections, handicrafts, etc. So by the time of Ashoka, except for the deep south and remote regions in eastern and northeastern India, the entire Indian subcontinent was virtually under the control of the Mauryas. So by the time of Ashoka, in also entire Indian subcontinent that was under the control of the Mauryas. That was a background. However, it must be noted that during this time there were still extensive forests and regions inhabited by hunter or gatherers. So there were still extensive regions and forests that were inhabited by hunter or gatherers. There were regions, particularly the Ganga Valley, characterized by surplus agricultural production. Urban settlements had emerged as centers for trade and craft production activities. So urban centers, the urban settlements that had also emerged as centers for trade and craft production activities. And there were regions, particularly the Ganga Valley, that was characterized by large agricultural production. Central administration. The Mauryan Empire had many major administrative units like the center and the regions, which had various subunits down to the village. The Mauryan Empire also had many major administrative units like the center as well as the regions which had various subunits down to the village. All these units had their own administrative setup, but they came under the central authority. So all these units, all these regions, they had their own administrative way of handling up things, but they all came under the main authority or the central authority. The central administration can be classified under following headings: the king, the council of ministers, city administration, army, espionage network, law and justice, as well as public welfare. So the king, council of ministers, city administration, army, espionage network, law and justice, as well as the public welfare were under the category of central administration. The king. The king was the supreme authority of the state. That was the ultimate authority of the state. All basic policy matters as well as crucial decisions were taken by the king. So all the important decisions, all the vital decisions were taken by the king about policy matters and about other things. The 7 components under the king, under the classification of king, were Mitra, friends; Danda, army; Kosa, treasury; Amatya, minister; Janapada, territory; Durga, fort. These were the elements of the Swami or the king. So these 7 components had to be maintained by the king in the proper manner. He had to maintain his friends, he had to maintain the army, he should also maintain the treasury, the finances, and also establish a unit of ministers. He should have a vast territory as well as the fort. So all these 7 components he had to maintain. Council of Ministers. It mentions it as the chariot cannot move on one wheel, hence, the king should appoint ministers and listen to their advice. The king should appoint ministers and listen to their advice. Similarly, the Girnar Rock Edicts of Ashoka mention about the functions of the council. Rock Edict 3rd implies that the Parishad was expected to see that new administrative measures were carried out by different categories of officials. So, Rock Edict 3rd implies that the new administrative measures were carried out by different categories of officials. Rock Edict 6th mentions that the ministers can discuss the king's policy during his absence, suggest amendments, and decide upon any important matter which the king has left to them. So, in the absence of the king, we can also discuss about the king's policy during his absence and suggest amendments, changes, or decide upon any important matter which the king has told them to decide. So these all ministers can do it. City administration, the central administration. The first committee looked after industry and crafts. Its functions included inspection of such centers, fixing the wages, etc. So the city administration, its functions included looking after industry, crafts, and the inspection of such centers and fixing the wages. The second committee looked after the foreigners. The third committee's work was registration of births and deaths. So, looking after trade and commerce, the functions of the fourth committee included inspection of weights and measures, controlling the market, etc. So, there were different elements under the city administration part also, which the king had also given these things to the city administration. There were different committees assigned for different works. The second committee for the foreigners, the first committee for industry and crafts, the third committee for the registration of births and deaths. And looking after the trade and commerce, the fourth committee also included inspection of weights and measures and also controlling the market. The fifth committee inspected the manufactured goods, made provisions for their sales. The fifth committee also saw what were the goods which were manufactured and they made provisions to how to sell them. Army. The Nanda kings had a strong army, and it is interesting that the army which Kautilya and Chandragupta had raised to defeat the Nanda king consisted of mercenary soldiers. So the army which Kautilya and Chandragupta had raised, they consisted of mercenary soldiers. Both the Greek and Indian literary sources refer to this. Later on, the size and organization of Chandragupta's army became fairly large. So, for example, according to Pliny's account, it consisted of 9,000 elephants, 3,000 cavalry, and 6,000 infantry. So, such a huge army Chandragupta had. Espionage. The Mauryan administration had a well-knit system of espionage. Espionage means to keep a spy on various suspicious elements or on the people. So a watch was kept practically on all important officials as well as on general public. So on the general public, the common man, as well as on the important officials, a close watch was kept. They had a well-knit system of espionage. The main task of the spies recruited involved keeping an eye over the ministers, reporting on government officials, collecting impressions regarding the feelings of citizens, collecting impressions at what did the citizens felt, what were their feelings, and know the secrets of foreign rulers, etc. To know the secrets of foreign rulers, reporting on government officials, and also keeping an eye over the ministers, and also collecting what were the citizens' feelings about a certain policy. Justice and punishment. In order to maintain social order, smooth functioning of the administrative system, and flow of revenues to the state in orderly legal system was established under the Mauryas. So, under the Mauryas, to maintain social order and discipline, smooth functioning of the administrative system had to be followed, and the flow of revenues to the state in an orderly legal system was also established under the Maurya, so that time to time the flow of revenue also kept coming to the state. The Arthashastra is full of codes listing punishments of various offences. These included a vast range from violation of marriage laws, divorce, murder, adulteration, wrong weights, etc. There were various kinds of courts to try the offenders of law or settle disputes at various levels. So there were various kinds of courts also to take the try of the offenders of the law or to settle disputes at various levels. And also these included, the offenses included violation of marriage laws, divorce or other wrong practices. Central administration, revenue administration. Kautilya has listed different resources from where revenue flowed into the state treasury, which was looked after by an official Sanidhata. So an official Sanidhata looked into the state treasury, where it was also looked at from where revenue flowed into the state treasury. So there were inflow of revenue. Inflow of revenue took place from road and traffic, Vanik Patha, cities, Durga, rural areas, Rashtra, mines, Khan, forests, Van, plantations, Setu, pastures, Vraja. So these, from these, the inflow of revenue took from these units, the inflow of revenue took place in the state treasury, that is known as Kosa. So from road and traffic, from cities, rural areas, mines, forests, plantations, pastures, from all these places revenue was taken and it was kept into the state treasury or the Kosa. Public works. The state took considerable interest in irrigation because it could be a major source of revenue. So it took the major interest in irrigation because it was also a source of revenue for the state, and it will improve agriculture as well. There are many references to medicine men of various kinds during this period, like ordinary physicians, midwives, etc. So there were medicine men and women, ordinary physicians, midwives, etc. The state also helped its citizens during natural calamities like floods, famines, etc. So during such calamities, the state also provided financial help and also other helps to the people. The Arthashastra mentions that the king should look after orphans, old unattended women, etc. So the Arthashastra mentions that the king should also look after the children who did not have parents, after orphans, and also the old unattended women. An important aspect of public works was the laying down and repair of roads and opening inns. So that was also an important aspect of the public, that was to repair of the roads and the opening of the inns. Provincial administration. The head of the provincial administration was the Kumara, who used to govern the province as the king's representative. For example, Ashoka had been the Kumara of Ujjaini and Taxila before becoming the king. The Kumara was in turn assisted by Mahamatyas and a council of ministers. From Ashokan edicts, we get the names of 4 provincial capitals: Tosali, Ujjain, Swarnagari and Taxila. So these were the 4 provincial capitals of the state, and the Kumara was in turn assisted by Mahamatyas and a council of ministers. And also Ashoka had been the Kumara of Ujjaini and Taxila before becoming the king. Certain areas within the province were administered by governors who may have been minor rulers of the area. So certain areas of the province were also administered by the governors. District and village level administration. The officials listed at the level of district during this period were Pradesheta, Rajuka and Yukta, the former being the overall in charge of the district, the Rajuka, and their functions included survey and assessment of land, tours and inspections, revenue collection and maintaining law and order, etc. So district and village level administration, all these the functions were included to maintain law and order, revenue collection, and all these other activities were also there. Relations with other powers. From the time of Chandragupta till the empire came to an end, we can divide the foreign relations of the Mauryas into 2 distinct phases: the initial phase or the phase of expansion, and the latter phase or the phase of consolidation. So also from the time of Chandragupta till the empire that came to an end, there were also foreign relations of the Mauryas that were divided into 2 phases: the initial phase, expansion phase, and the consolidation phase. We have a variety of sources which give information in this regard. The Ashokan inscriptions, for example, mention contemporary rulers in other parts of the world. The initial phase was marked by a policy of securing trade routes and subjugating the Greek settlements in the north and northwest region. So that was the initial phase that was marked by a policy of securing trade routes. That was all about trade routes and also the time of the Chandragupta as well as the Maurya, were their system of administration, the provincial administration, and how the king should be looking into various aspects. These are some of the questions. You have to do it yourself. Question number 1. Discuss in about 10 lines the sources of revenue and expenditure of the Mauryan state. And question number 2. Discuss the various phases in the relation of Mauryas with other powers. Answer in 10 lines. That's all. Thank you. Happy learning. We learning.